Charlie, the president is all about win and loss, right? Who wins? Is it a political win? And this is very much tied into 2020 because this was a 2016 campaign promise here. The president, and he hears it from Sean Hannity, he hears it from others when he falters on this. Who won this battle? Who won this battle in the midst of the larger 2020 war?
Well, this is really, at the end of the day, this is a stalemate. Nothing much has changed. So to that extent, I guess you'd have to say the president lost. But he lost because he set an unrealistic expectation. He talked about a wall and Mexico paying for it, 2,000 miles from sea to shining sea. Now he's walked that back, as he had to. And now that we're having a serious conversation, he's going to get 700 miles, which is what I supported when I was a co-sponsor of the Secure Fence Act. We didn't pick 700 miles out of the air. That was done with a lot of expert consultation. And now he's doing the things that need to be done, but he's not going to get this pie-in-the-sky wall that he foolishly promised during the campaign.
I want to ask you now about a different topic. That of course, the comments by Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar regarding talking about Jewish money influencing members of Congress. She issued an apology. I'm going to put this up on the screen for you, saying the following: "Anti-Semitism is real, and I'm grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes. My intention is never to offend my constituents or Jewish Americans as a whole. We have to always be willing to step back and think through criticism, just as I expect people to hear me when others attack me for my identity. That's why I unequivocally apologize." First to you, Bakari Sellers, the apology. Does that settle this issue in your view for Congresswoman Omar?
No, it doesn't settle the issue. I think that her comments were ignorance that were enveloped in anti-Semitism. And the reason I say that it was ignorance is her comments were directed at AIPAC, a bipartisan organization, which doesn't spend money on candidates, which doesn't fund candidates. And if you look at the top 50 organizations that spend money on lobbying, it's not even there. It's a bipartisan group that's a pro-Israel group, but yet still very much bipartisan. And the reason that I'm disappointed in her comments, more so than the anti-Semitism and the racism that we are enveloped in this country right now, is that it made the conversation about Israel, that's a very nuanced conversation, more difficult to have. There are many of us who are friends of AIPAC, who are friends of Israel, but have very critical opinions on Bibi Netanyahu. And those criticisms are okay. Those criticisms are valid. I believe that Ambassador Shapiro said it best. But when you start to go down this path of anti-Semitic rhetoric, it doesn't do anybody any good. And so I'm glad that she made an apology. I'm glad that the Democrats were forceful in asking her to make that apology. But we have to make sure that this effort to bring peace between our Palestinian brothers and sisters and Israel is one that is bipartisan, and Representative Omar made that quite difficult. So I'm quite disappointed. I think that it was ignorant, and I think it was enveloped in anti-Semitism, and I challenge her to do as much as she can to learn more about what's going on from Sderot to Jerusalem to Tel Aviv and everywhere in between.
Charlie, Den, I'm curious if you think the Republican Party has been sufficiently vigilant in policing bigotry within its own ranks, whether you're talking about Steve King. My colleague Jake Tapper brought up that Kevin McCarthy weeks ago in the midst of the wall debate talked about what many took as an anti-Semitic comment, accusing George Soros of funding the caravan. Has your party been sufficiently vigilant here, calling out its own bad behaviors and comments?
Not as much as it should be. There are certainly nativist elements within the Republican Party that engage in ethnic and racially incendiary comments. You mentioned Steve King and the president himself on Mexicans and Muslims and others. So we have a problem within our own party. By the same token, the Democrats have a demon in their party. There is an anti-Israel element within the Democratic, I'll say maybe more the fringe element of the Democratic Party, that at times, they can disagree with Israel on policy, but sometimes it crosses into anti-Semitism, as was the case with Congresswoman Omar, when they get into this BDS and they accuse Israel of terrible things like genocide and apartheid. They really are engaging in severe anti-Semitism. So both parties have demons here, and I would argue that this nativism, isolationism, and protectionism, this three-headed monster, I think contributes to this type of ugly conversation.
Bakari, Charlie, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Still